Let's dive right into this explainer. Today, we're unpacking the absolutely fascinating, totally complex, and honestly, pretty tragic transfer tale of Danish football legend Brian Laudrup. It's a story that perfectly highlights just how unpredictable football transfers can be, right? The massive clash between expectations and reality, and the sometimes brutal business side of the sport. We're going to break down exactly what happened when a player who was quite literally at the absolute peak of his powers decided to walk away from a club that utterly adored him.
To really wrap our heads around this cautionary tale, we have to start by asking one fundamental question. Seriously, think about this. Why would a player intentionally leave a club where he was worshipped, like treated as absolute royalty? Usually, when a player moves on, it's because they aren't getting off the bench or they've had this massive falling out with the manager. But as you'll see here, Laudrup's situation was the exact opposite. He had everything a footballer could possibly dream of, and yet he still chose to walk out the door.
Part 1. The King of Ibrox. Okay, to truly understand why this exit was so shocking, we first have to look at just how unbelievable his golden era at Glasgow Rangers really was. When he showed up in Scotland back in 1994, he didn't just join a new team, he completely resurrected his career after a really miserable, unhappy spell over in Italy. I mean, look at the sheer dominance of his stats here. 44 goals in 150 appearances. But it wasn't just about putting numbers on a board. He was an absolute revelation. He drove Rangers through this incredibly historic era of success. The guy was so influential that he became the very first foreign player to win Scotland's Player of the Year. And he actually did it twice. Manager Walter Smith gave him total, absolute freedom on and off the pitch, and Laudrup repaid that trust by becoming one of the most dangerous attackers in world football.
Part 2. The European Frustration.
So here's where the cracks start to show. Despite all that domestic bliss and the total tactical freedom from Walter Smith, a pretty fatal flaw emerged. Put simply, things were just too easy at home and way too difficult abroad. On one hand, you've got utter domestic dominance. I mean, Rangers were winning an incredible 9 league titles in a row. But on the other side, total European humiliation. The real breaking point happened during a UEFA Cup exit against a French team called Strasbourg. Now, to put this into perspective, Strasbourg were sitting third from the bottom of the French league at the time. They even went down to 10 men during the match, and yet they still managed to knock Rangers out. For a player of Laudrup's caliber, crashing out like that was profoundly embarrassing. He actually summed up the core issue perfectly in his own words. He said, if you win the same league 9 times in a row, it could be because you don't get the competition. Basically, he was bored. That lack of a weekly challenge gave him this overwhelming itch to test himself on a bigger stage. He really felt that British football might have been a bit too old-fashioned tactically to make a dent in Europe, and he was absolutely desperate for a higher level of week-in, week-out competition.
Part 3. The Lure of London.
So what were those tantalizing pull factors that finally drew him down south? Well, again, in his own words, I have always wanted to play in the Premiership, and that drew me towards signing for Chelsea. Now, the irony here is just off the charts. Literally 2 years earlier, Rangers had tried to sign Gianluca Vialli, but Vialli rejected them for Chelsea specifically because he wanted the prestige of the English Premier League. Now, Laudrup was making the exact same calculation. The global spotlight, the prestige, the wildly entertaining style of Premiership football, it was all simply too big for Laudrup to resist. He bags this massive Bosman free transfer, officially joining the London club on July 1st, 1998. We're talking a highly lucrative 3-year contract worth nearly £6 million. That is a massive deal. He truly believed, deep down, that this was the ultimate step up for his career. He was walking into a cosmopolitan, highly ambitious Chelsea side, and on paper, it honestly looked like a match made in heaven.
Part 4. The Chelsea Nightmare.
But man, did that dream dissolve into total chaos almost the second he arrived in West London. The unraveling was breathtakingly fast. Just watch this timeline. Step 1. Laudrup signs his pre-contract agreement under manager Ruud Gullit. Okay, great. But before Laudrup even really gets unpacked, Step 2 happens. Gullit is abruptly sacked. Just gone. Step 3. Gianluca Vialli takes over as player manager. And Step 4 is where the wheels completely fall off the wagon. Vialli implements this incredibly strict squad rotation policy, so Laudrup, a guy completely used to being the very first name on the team sheet at Rangers, suddenly finds himself sitting on the bench. The guy was desperately fighting to get out of his contract before he'd barely even kicked a ball. The contrast in his fortunes is just staggering. Look at this breakdown. Under Walter Smith, he had a fantastic relationship, huge tactical freedom, and netted 44 goals. Under Vialli, strict rotation, a ton of public frustration, and exactly 0 league goals for Chelsea. None. He literally pleaded to leave, But Chelsea threatened him with legal action, basically saying, hey, we hold your registration. So now he's homesick, completely frustrated, and totally trapped.
Part 5. A bizarre escape.
Okay, you have to follow me closely here, because the mechanics of how he eventually escaped are a bureaucratic mess of epic proportions. Step 1, he actually plays his final game for Chelsea against FC Copenhagen in the Cup Winners' Cup, and get this, he scores the winning goal. Step 2, literally right after the second leg of that tie, he immediately transfers to FC Copenhagen, the very team he just helped knock out. Step 3, to make this crazy deal work, Copenhagen sends their player, Bjarne Goldbach, over to Chelsea as a swap. But wait, it gets even weirder. Step 4, just 8 months later, Laudrup gets itchy feet again and wants to leave Copenhagen for Ajax. But because of this hidden technicality in his release, leaving Copenhagen meant he technically reverted back to being a Chelsea player. I'm serious. Ajax literally had to pay Chelsea £1.7 million in compensation just to release him. It was utter madness.
Part 6. The Ultimate Regret.
When the dust finally settled, he played a brief stint for Ajax before retiring from professional football at just 31 years old. 31! Looking back on all his choices, he realized, quite bittersweetly, that his time at Glasgow Rangers was, without a doubt, the happiest time of his career. He openly admitted that if he had known the immense, unbelievable difficulties that would face him by signing that agreement with Chelsea, he might have just stayed in Glasgow. Because despite all that money and the flashy allure of Premiership prestige, he had voluntarily walked away from the absolute best days of his footballing life.
So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with this final thought regarding Laudrup's whole cautionary tale. We hear it all the time, but is the grass ever truly greener? Or do we really only figure out the value of what we have once we've thrown it all away? You have to wonder, would his legacy be entirely different today if he had just stayed right where he was given the freedom to play his natural game, surrounded by people who truly appreciated his absolute genius? It's a huge question that every ambitious professional has to weigh carefully. Thanks for joining me as we unpacked one of football's most fascinating transfer regrets.